through the era of you stay at one agency for your entire career, but your entire career now, back then it could have just been 20 or 25 years depending on your retirement package, but now it's upwards of 35 years. To expect someone to only stay at one agency for 35 years is unrealistic. So I think we need to start being more open to the fact that people are going to leave. And I, as a leader, would prefer to, help my people grow because they're going to continue to be a connection for me later on. They're going to go out there in the world. They're going to be like, oh, you came from this lab. They're top notch over there. So hey there, my name's Ashley Church.
And I'm Erin West.
We were once newly promoted crime scene and latent print supervisors on mutual struggle buses as we both simultaneously tried to navigate through the challenges within our forensic units.
Now we run a business where we create tools and resources that we wish we had had to make these transitions easier. We like to talk about the experiences we've had in the forensic field, the good, the bad, and the ugly, in the hopes to create awareness around these issues and move the needle forward to create positive change in the forensic community.
So if you're a forensic professional, regardless of your years of experience, who's not afraid to dive into real, raw, and sometimes uncomfortable topics, you're in the right place.
This is the Forensics Unfiltered podcast.
Hello and welcome to Taboo Topics, where we talk about all the things in the forensic world, that people usually try to keep hush-hush, or it's just not kosher to talk about. So tonight we'll be talking about changing agencies and changing careers within forensics, both very taboo things that some people, feel uncomfortable to talk about with others in their agencies. Unfortunately, Erin will not be here tonight. Super sad. She was literally digging in the bottom of a lake today. You heard that right. She was digging at the bottom of the lake because they drained the lake. So yeah, she's pretty exhausted, which I think is pretty understandable. And so she is not going to be here for Taboo Topics Tuesdays. So it's just me. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is changing agencies. And that can be really awkward. Both Erin and I have gone through that. We've had, unique experiences, but I think a lot of it kind of mirrors in other agencies. You hear about it a lot, no matter if you're in a different state or county or whatever. So for me, I was moving to a sister agency, literally just one county over. And I can tell you, I definitely felt a lot of anxiety about going through that process, even just telling someone hey, I think I'm gonna apply to this other agency. I tried to keep it hush-hush, did not work out that way. Rumors fly real fast, right? Before I even had an interview, I was cornered and said, hey, I've heard from all of these people that I did not personally tell that you are going to this other agency. Why haven't you told me yet? And I hadn't even gone through the interview at that point. All I did was go take a tour, fill out the application, and I think I had just started maybe the background check. And not, I didn't do the voice stress test yet, hadn't even interviewed yet, and the news got out. So I think what's really important if you are a leader in forensics is if your employees feel uncomfortable coming to you and telling you, hey, I think I'm going to take this other direction in my career. Why? There's some people that just want to stay private, and that's, totally fine. But if it's a majority of your employees that try to keep everything hush-hush and under wraps until they're ready to turn in those 2 weeks, why? Erin has actually had the experience with one of her superiors where he actually encouraged her, wanted her to grow, knew she was going to grow out of the position that she was in, and he was actually a reference for her whenever she went to apply to other positions. And how awesome would that be to have one of your supervisors be completely aware of your intentions, and actually be a reference for you on your application. So I don't know if you've had any experiences with that. Hopefully, you have some really great relationships with your supervisors, and maybe you're in Erin's boat, but that wasn't the case for me. And it's mainly because you kind of witness what happens to other people whenever they turn in their 2 weeks and move on either to a different agency or a different career path or what have you. And I didn't feel that it was a positive environment for me to disclose that information, and so I didn't. And yeah, you kind of feel like a traitor sometimes, right? Maybe you witnessed other people getting some backlash during their last 2 weeks or however long, the stint is. So yeah, I would really, if you're a leader in the forensic community and you don't make it like an open environment for people to come to you with this information, maybe you need to do some internal work. That was just my experience, and it was just not very pleasant to go through that. Let me see if any of you guys have any questions. Why did you want to leave? Oh, so good question. The reason I wanted to leave, there's some things I probably won't disclose on here, but it had to do with the environment in the unit. But there's also some other personal reasons. So I did want to start a family. I wanted to kind of have like a slower call schedule. And that was something the other agency could offer me. Like they literally had maybe a third or a quarter of the call volume than I had currently. So that was very attractive for me. And something else, as far as like my experience moving to a sister agency, is I still had friends that worked at the original agency. And after I left, a few months down the road, I was hearing things that some people were saying, and they're like, oh, she claimed that she wanted to leave because she wanted to start a family, but she hasn't done that yet. And unbeknownst to them, we were actually having difficulty getting pregnant. So it took us about 7 months before we were able to get our first pregnancy test. But it's really disheartening, when you work at a former agency and they're still talking about you leaving, and it wasn't in a positive light, it was in a negative light. And so I think that's why a lot of people in the forensic community don't want to voice that they want to leave or that they're looking into leaving or why they're leaving, because the rumors are crazy. So anyway, that was, again, just kind of my unique experience as far as leaving an agency. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Maybe you have had some similar experiences, but that was just my experience. So how would you combat the negativity? Sometimes the only thing you can do is to combat it is to control your own reaction to it. So you can't stop them from saying negative things, like that's their problem to deal with, but you can change your reaction and the stuff you're telling yourself. That's kind of how the approach that I took. I don't really have shame in how I did things because, I stayed true to myself, and it was a really good move for me. So I stand by my choices, and that's pretty much how the only way you can combat the negativity. So, if they're going to spread rumors and talk crap about you, you can't really control that. You can just control your own emotions and your own reactions to it. What is an effective way to do your research on an agency to know if they have a healthier work environment? Talk to the people that currently are in that agency now and talk to the people that have left recently. And some of them, may not be so open, but some of them may tell you exactly how things are. And some people will be a little bit more blunt. Maybe they're very bitter. But if you're seeing a common theme for why people leave, there's probably some truth in that. I've always thought exit interviews were a good idea. Why you were leaving, was it something we did or specific? So I actually did an exit interview. I think I still did a very tasteful exit interview, but I know a lot of people or some people before me that also did exit interviews and echoed the same concerns and problems that I did, and it didn't seem to do much. So is it easy to build connection with people who work in another agency? Sure. Why not? That's actually how I got the other job. I had someone that I was working with that they reached out to him and was like, hey, would you like this position? He was an intern at this agency before. They really liked him. They wanted to have him come back. He had other goals in mind that he was reaching for. And so he told me about the position and said, hey, I know you were looking into, maybe slowing down a little bit. This opportunity came about, and, I built the connection from there. So don't stay in your own little bubble, especially if you go to trainings or if you're involved in IAI, the International Association of Identification, that type of thing. Build those connections. When you're in training, don't stay in your own little bubble. If someone invites you to go out to dinner or, be involved in some type of group activity, don't close yourself off, because you never know when you will utilize that connection later on in your career. So absolutely. It's easy to build connection with people if you are looking to do that. If you guys have any other questions about changing agencies, keep them in the comments below. But I'll start talking about changing career paths. I don't know if you guys have big audacious dreams. A lot of people actually use crime scene positions as a step towards something bigger. So maybe they want to work in a lab. Maybe they want to be a big private investigator. I don't know. It's their own personal things. But you can also have some pushback. Someone in our comment section was even saying hey, I work at an agency. My goal is to become, a crime scene investigator in the forensic unit. And I was told I couldn't even voice that dream because it would upset people. That's crazy. But it happens, right? It even happens when you're inside of the forensic unit. If you tell people hey, I'm looking to promote to a different position within the agency. So maybe you want to be a digital forensic person. Maybe you want to be a latent print examiner. And some people feel like they can't even voice that because, you're going to leave this other unit short, whatever the drama is. And same thing if you are looking into going into something outside the agency. So if you want to go work in a state lab or a private lab, that's also taboo too, right? I've never actually worked in a lab setting, but I could imagine if you were, to tell someone I'm looking into going to the private side, people will probably give you some side looks for that too. So in my case, I did a hard left turn. I wasn't expecting it, but I started to become an instructor for trainings, forensic trainings. And then out of that became an entrepreneur. So that can be really different too. I would say in that instance, I felt like I had more support. I wasn't as afraid to voice my intentions. My hesitancy and my anxiety came from within, as far as a people pleaser. For me, if I know I'm about to disappoint someone or upset them, that's when I have anxiety because I don't want to disappoint or upset them. So in that case, I didn't feel like my superiors would be resentful. I just knew internally oh, this is gonna feel really awkward because I'm about to disappoint them. I'm about to leave the agency. And it had nothing to do with, it had more personal things to do with that. But whenever I became a forensic instructor, I had a lot of imposter syndrome going on. Kind of who am I to be able to teach classes? I had it in my head oh, I don't even know if I have that many years, enough years. What's enough years? I don't know, to be credible. Who am I to be able to do this? So there was definitely a lot of internal anxiety going on because of that. And as well as finances. So someone also mentioned with my government job, I have all these benefits and retirement. That's what my comfort zone was too, right? I was fed from a very young age, the thing to do is go get a government job with benefits and a retirement. And so it felt really strange to go against that. And I have learned, as scary as it is, when you're in that sink or swim, you will find a way. You will find a way. So, even though I don't have a traditional job now, we still have health insurance and benefits. We're creating our own financial gains in other ways. and not really super dependent on being in a government job. So if you were looking into maybe the private sector, I don't know much about that because I haven't worked in the private sector, but I would imagine that, you know, even if they don't have the same traditional benefits as a government job, you can still make it work. You can make it work for sure. So let me go through some of these questions. I watched one of your older topics that caught my attention was that most agencies won't recognize if you have a master's degree. After obtaining my bachelor's, should I not aim for my master's degree? So this is not really on this topic, but you can still get a job with a bachelor's. We had masters, so you are competing with people that have masters too. That's more of a personal decision. I don't want you to go in debt trying to get into this career because it doesn't pay a whole lot. So like, you know, don't go spend tens of thousands of dollars or like get loans and then be very disappointed with the salary. When you say private sector, do you mean in a field of forensics too? I thought forensics doesn't have private companies. Yes. So in Florida, for instance, we use DNA Labs Internationals. So they are a private lab and they do their own DNA testing. And even our state lab, they would outsource to that private lab as well. I think they outsourced to one other company, Florida did. Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE, outsourced to DNA Labs International and one other DNA private company. But yeah, those definitely do exist. And I'm pretty sure in Texas, they've also privatized like crime scene units too. That is what I mean by the private sector. Someone says 100% accurate. I'm in a lab. Can anyone go from CSI to pathologist without going back to school? I don't know. I think what you mean with pathologist is you're either talking about working in the morgue. So some states use a medical examiner, and I know you have to have a medical degree for that. So yeah, you'd have to go back to school. But some coroner states, you don't have to have that level of education. So, oh, that's the other one. We outsource to Bode here in Maryland. Yeah. And then someone else outsources to Perks when they get behind. So those labs definitely do exist. And I wouldn't be surprised because so many states are so backlogged. Like when you hear about people waiting like 1 or 2 years for homicide evidence to be analyzed, that's a problem. So I think you might see some more private labs pop up just to fill in those gaps, which I think is great as long as, you know, they're kosher with their practices. In a peer review, I received a comment to stop focusing so much on my future. That's so bad. How do I deal with such comments? I mean, you just let it roll off your back, right? It is your life, your life. No one can tell you to stifle your dreams. If you want to listen to that, that's one thing, but I'm here to tell you, like, I think being around someone like Erin has helped me so much because she, like, any opportunity, she's like, yeah, sure, we'll try it. We can do that. And at first, when we started this company, those dreams felt way too big. I was like, oh no, we need to like keep it inside this box. This is the only bubble that I know. And when you start reaching out of your comfort zone and you still dream those big dreams, you will surprise yourself. So now there's a lot of other things that I'm like, oh yeah, we could totally do this. That a year ago, it would have frightened the crap out of me. How can I find those private labs in my cities? I don't know. Is there a website? Is there a website to go find? I mean, I'm sure you can try to find LinkedIn too. So with LinkedIn, we put this in our free PDF resource for students where you can actually like search for jobs. So if you like search for, I don't know, DNA analyst, it will pop up with all of those jobs in your area. You can actually like search within your area or search within like different states or the whole nation. And I'm sure stuff like that will pop up. So if anyone works in a lab and you know how to find privatized labs, forensic labs in your state and know what to Google, just type it in the comments because I'm not that person. I don't know. I think that covers it pretty much. And one other comment, private labs are out there, mostly word of mouth. Many private labs are small and only have a few examiners. Exactly, yeah. So they're harder to come by. But start making those connections, building those bridges now. And I'm sure you can also like kind of network with them at conferences and such too. I've swapped agencies and I've gone from the bottom to the top. Yep. And that was the case for me as well. It was not expected. I was not expecting to be promoted so fast, but you never know. It opened up a completely different door for me. And I'm very thankful for making the decision for myself. And then it opened up other doors for me, which is great. Someone else said, check the American Academy of Forensic Sciences website. They may have resources for you to look into private labs there. And how would have changed the problem at the agency that you left if you could? It really would have been to promote, but at that particular agency, people were waiting like 10 plus years to promote, and I was definitely not in line at that time. So to make a really big impact and a change that I would have wanted to, it would have taken a lot longer. You know, moving to, especially, you know, the time in my life where we were trying to start a family too, it was the best decision I could have made for myself. And then I got to be a good impact on a different lab. And I don't regret any of it. All right, someone said thanks for the information. You are welcome. Hopefully it helps. It is super uncomfortable if you've never changed agencies before, but I think it's gonna be more common. It really is. Unfortunately, like, there's a lot of people, a lot of senior people that have lived through the era of you stay at one agency for your entire career, but your entire career now, you know, back then it could have just been 20 or 25 years depending on your retirement package, but now it's upwards of 35 years. To expect someone to only stay at one agency for 35 years is unrealistic. So I think we need to start being more open to the fact that people are going to leave. And I, as a leader, would prefer to, you know, help my people grow, because they're going to continue to be a connection for me later on. They're going to go out there in the world. They're going to be like, oh, you came from this lab. They're top notch over there. So like it only benefits you if you kind of help your people grow. They can move on from the agency if they want to. If they want to stay at the agency, then great. You can help them grow within your agency. But I don't think the expectation of having them stay for X amount of years, like, that's kind of gone now. So just embrace it and expect it and help your people, you know, move on if that's what they want. I think this is good, healthy discussions. A lot of this is kind of sensitive information, but if you're looking at changing agencies or changing career paths at this time, it could be uncomfortable to talk about in a public setting. So if you want to message me privately, feel free to do that if you have any other questions or need any other support in any way. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you so much for being here and listening to Forensics Unfiltered. If you liked this episode, would you do us a favor and leave a review letting us know specifically what you liked about this topic? It will only take a minute, but it will really help us plan future episodes so we can bring you more topics that you want to listen to. We'll be sure to provide any links from today's episode in our show notes on our website. Head to www.gapscience.com. Until next time, stay safe out there.